Again, my name is Lisa Mullaney, and I'm part of the business transition group here at Fifth Third Bank. My job is primarily to work with privately held, family-type businesses and help them think about exit strategies. Make sure that they're being mindful and being prepared to really kind of maximize the amount of proceeds that they keep as a result of exiting a business. We're also going to touch a little bit about ESOPs and small business financing. And the goal of this conversation is really to initially just kind of provide awareness. From a 1 hour discussion, you're not going to be able to learn all the intricacies of tax law, but we really want to just to make sure that everyone becomes aware of just kind of the advanced nature that needs to be incorporated into any type of exit strategy, and to have resources when you are considering an exit, people to reach out to that can really provide you with sound advice. That's really the goal. And I'll flip my bio here. I'm based in Chicago, moved to Chicago to go to Kellogg for business school, and I've never left. So I live just about 3 blocks from Wrigley Field. I also have my colleague, Sean Obermeyer, who is not on this call, who I just want to flip through here. What I want to just make sure everyone on the call is aware of is we also have our local Toledo-based team all on the call. These are some of the people that are not showing their faces, but are available for questions at the end if you do have specific questions. We are going to also share this deck so you can have everyone's direct contact information. So what is business transition and what is business transition planning? Again, for every family business, that might be something different. It might be passing a business on to the next generation. It might be selling a part of the business. It might be selling all of the business. It's really going to vary depending on your family, the ownership structure, and the nature of your business. One of the things that we learn in every business school case study is that you have to have an exit plan from the very beginning of, the planning stages. Is how do you get out? No one lives forever. Most of us would like to retire, and you want to make sure to really, maximize the amount of proceeds that are available and that you actually get to keep at the end of your business life cycle. Again, businesses are 100% inevitable. We have great statistics that 77% of privately held businesses have transitioned or will transition over the next 5 years. We see a lot of boomers that are just kind of waiting for something to happen. I have a great personal example. There's a really well-known donut shop that's actually in my neighborhood called Dinkle's Donuts. It's been there for over 100 years. Everyone goes there in Chicago. You go to a party if there's Dinkle's Donuts. And sadly, I just saw a notification in my local paper that they're just closing. They didn't sell. They just, the end of their lease, and the current patriarch wanted to retire, but they didn't sell the business. They just let their lease run out. And it was really locally very, very disappointing because, there was brand recognition in that business. People know Dinkle's Donuts. They might not necessarily know the family that owns it, but it was really a missed opportunity because there wasn't a transition in place. And I think that owner just thought, hey, I've been running this business, my lease is up. But there really could have been quite a bit of value that could have been captured there. So it was really a missed opportunity. So again, transitions are going to happen in every business. Someone's going to want to get out, someone's going to want to stay in, someone's going to have kids, someone doesn't, someone gets sick. We want to make sure that every, operating business has some type of, current transition plan in place. And again, it really kind of drives satisfaction. You begin with qualitative discussions. You want to really find a correct, and sophisticated advisory team to help you, achieve your goals. A lot of families run their life through their family business, from the car, that's the business car, that's also the personal car. There's a lot of, when it's a business, a privately held business, there's less differentiation between the business and your personal life. So you really want to make sure to get a very talented team to help you, achieve those goals when you exit. again, this is kind of a sadder slide, but you know, the generational transfer tends to go down. You know, as there's from the wealth creator. You know, we see 38% success to the second generation, less to the third, and even less to the fourth. And again, there's, you know, people that have just not spent their whole life growing this business. There's less interest. The example that I always think of is I had a client that they owned a very successful chain of hairdressers. You know, they did highlights like what I have. That's not the natural blonde, but they did hair, right? And it was a mother, and she had 3 sons. And the business was very successful, but let's be honest, the 3 sons were less interested in hair. So she tried to pass the business on to them, but there just wasn't the same intrinsic involvement and real curiosity about, you know, the beauty industry. It didn't make sense for them. And I think, you know, in that situation, it made more sense for them to sell the business. But there's just going to be, you know, less success passing it on from generation to generation. And at every point, you want to make sure that you have the best people, the most involved and interested, you know, people kind of running the business. And, you know, your advisory team can help you with that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is, you know, conflicting objectives in a family business. If you're on this call and you have a family business, you're going to be very familiar with this. There's the owners, maybe the parents, there's the family members, maybe they're working in a business, maybe one child is, maybe one child isn't. You know, there's someone that might be in a more operational role, whereas there's another child that could be more of a visionary. You know, what we see oftentimes with families, and this is all I do all day long, is people that have a business, but then there's different levels of involvement for, you know, their children. They say, okay, I want to be fair, but one of my kids works in the business and lives and breathes this business. The other one isn't interested, but they're doing something very meaningful with their life. And one of the other ones just likes to kind of, you know, collect checks. And how do I, you know, make a fair distribution? What do I do with this business? Do I leave it to them? Do I sell it? How do I, you know, do I treat one child differently because they've helped grow the business more than some of the other ones? So, you know, conflict is really inherent in these businesses. And, you know, what we do oftentimes, because everyone thinks their situation is really very unique, but most of the time it's not. So, you know, when you go to an organization, potentially like ours, we can walk you through, you know, options or solutions that have worked for other families, ways of finding that balance, you know, that fairness that everyone kind of likes to really achieve for their children, give you ways of really accomplishing that, because there's just going to be inherent conflict, but you're not unique. This has been, you know, all the great American business success stories have had these, and we can help you kind of walk through that. All right, things that you need to talk about today. First, I think, you know, what I would always say to every family is, again, transition is inevitable, which we mentioned before. You know, it's never going to be the same, just like children grow up, businesses grow up, things change. I always like, you know, the analogy I always make is like the horse and buggy industry was very active and growing a while, you know, 100 years ago, and America Online was really big, and now you make fun of anyone with an AOL, you know, email address, right? So things are inevitably going to change, and you want to make sure to have active discussions with the people that are involved in your business. No one likes to be surprised. I think that's something that is, you know, can be more detrimental than any other transition, is being surprised when you think that something was, you know, going one direction and then it's really not. And to create an advisory team. The U.S. tax code, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit, is very complex. It's not intuitive, and it changes. So we want to make sure that you're, you know, have the right advisory team that's gonna, be able to help you navigate through the way the laws in this country really work. To create a contingency plan. I think we've all learned that with COVID, right? Like no one would have ever thought, we'd be wearing masks and early in the day Lysoling packages as they were coming in. Things can change on a dime, and you want to make sure the first step would be really to make sure that there is an emergency plan, a contingency plan in place. If someone, were to pass away, if someone were to become ill, you don't want to lose all this value that's been created in a business because you didn't have a plan in place. And again, that goes back to your advisory team as well, that there's business professionals like myself and the individuals that I introduced on this call earlier that can help you put that plan in place. Your tax attorney, your estate planning attorney, they do this. This is what their jobs are. So you want to make sure to put that contingency plan in place and really, secure your business. Next, I guess what I would say is, understand the value of your business. Again, it's like when the house next door sells, even if you're not selling, you always want to know what they got for it, right? It's smart. It's smart to know, how the market is viewing your business. What's it really worth? And as that valuation changes, there's going to be, similarly changes that you're going to need to be making to your planning, to your, financial, with your financial plan, and to really have, a documented transition plan. Again, it's one thing to verbally speak to people, as we mentioned in, the first bullet point here, but you need to memorialize that. You need to have a formalized plan of what's next for your business. That's more than just a conversation. People remember things differently. You want signatures. You want things very clearly outlined in terms of what's next for your business. And then finally, I guess what I would always tell people is what's next for you as a business owner. Sometimes we have people say, oh, I could get this much money out of the business. Maybe it's 5 million, 10 million. But if you're spending, 1 million a month, that's an extreme number, but that might not be enough for you. Or what are you going to do all day? What if you're 45 years old and you're going to live another, this is only the midway point in your life. What's next? Oftentimes there's a lot of disappointment if people don't know what's next in their life. What's going to be meaningful for you? If you've been an entrepreneur, you've obviously been a go-getter, someone kind of not used to lounging around. We find most of our entrepreneurs have become serial entrepreneurs. They start another business. They do something else that's meaningful for them, maybe a charity, a foundation, if they don't want to spend all of that time with their families. But you need to make sure that you have a plan in place that you can financially afford, as well as are going to, is going to really bring you satisfaction for the next stage. And getting started, no one likes doing this, right? But I guess what I would say, it's, again, hopefully people have realized it's from the beginning of the presentation, it's, really important to have that plan in place. And again, you don't need to recreate the wheel. There's, been many business transitions, and there's people that are helpful. You need an advisory team. Your CPA, someone that you trust, someone that is well-versed in, privately held businesses, potential business transactions, which is going to be more complex than the, day-to-day, or I'd say, annual tax prep. A transactional attorney, which again, we can, help make introductions to these. A lot of these individuals all know each other. They work together often. So if you have, a key resource that you already trust and have a strong relationship with, oftentimes you can get names of other advisors from them, people that they trust, people that they've had success with. That's going to be a transactional attorney, a trust and estate attorney to make sure that, everything is in place with your estate plan. Again, most of this work you want done in advance of a transaction. That's where you can really do the great planning work. You can maximize the amount of cash that you keep as a result of, a potential sale, is when you can do the prep work ahead of time. So before a sale is, going to close next month, you want to engage these people. a wealth advisor, people like, the team that I work at Fifth Third, to make sure that what you're getting, how much are you going to keep? How much is going to be available for your use? What are the, large financial transactions that are on the horizon? Is that college, a vacation house, just, your spending? Make sure that that's enough for you. An M&A advisor, someone that's going to help you with the transaction. So again, you want your team in place, and maybe beginning with an existing important relationship that you have, before you really kind of begin this cycle. Okay. This is kind of the doom and gloom thing. But first, I guess what I would always say is begin with the short-term succession plan. What happens, when the proverbial bus comes and, you might pass away unexpectedly? What happens when somebody gets a divorce? What happens when someone's spouse dies? Are you in business suddenly with the wife or husband of your former business partner? How do you buy each other out? Do you have, insurance that covers the key employees? You want to make sure that in the event of, an extreme situation, all your bases are covered. That's the most critical thing, is to make sure that in the near term, there's not any large holes in your plan that are going to put you in a vulnerable position. And again, you want to update this regularly every year. Maybe it's, a good refresh, and really just have that contingency plan in place. Again, I think COVID has actually helped motivate quite a few people into thinking about how they can really cover themselves. That is one of the, that along with the growth of Zoom and the ability for people to use Zoom, I think is one of the good takeaways from COVID. Developing an exit strategy. This is a big thing, right? Who could you sell this business to? Who do you want it to go to? Some people have kids that they would like to pass the business on to, but what if some people can afford to just transfer the business to their kids in some way in terms of gifting. Maybe you want to sell it. Maybe you need to sell that business so you can live your lifestyle. How does that work? What is the business worth, right? What are people, I'm often surprised. Most people don't have an accurate picture of what their business is worth. It's either they think it's worth a lot less, like the donut shop people that were in my neighborhood that just turned in the key, or they think it's worth, quite a bit more, just because they put their heart and soul and they feel that someone should be able to, is going to pay a lot of money for this. And you have to really kind of make sure that your business is transferable. If you hold all the relationships and everything goes through you and you're the most important part of that business, that's not necessarily a good thing. Usually it's not, because those relationships might not be transferable to another individual or another team. So you want to make sure to really, consider who you might be selling this to, and to make sure to kind of provide, I'd say, transferability of relationships. There is, a transfer to the next generation or, another owner. So you really want to make sure to be mindful of, who your target audience is and what's it really worth. Next, I would say timing. As I mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit later, that the U.S. tax code is very complex, but if you do some really thoughtful pre-planning work, you can save quite a bit of money in terms of what you get to keep as a result of a sale, or as how much you can actually pass down to the next generation. So again, this is something that you want to think of before you have a letter of intent, ahead of the transaction, what you need to do. And that's when you want to pull in the advisory team to, work with you and understand, what type of prep work you want to do to get your business ready for sale, as well as get your personal life ready. Okay, so succession planning. What comes next? Who are you going to sell to, right? Like, it could be other owners, maybe one of your business partners. It could be, younger key employees, right? It's someone that's You know, the new up-and-comer that's been excited about the business and is ready to take it over with new ideas and new technology. It could be your child. It could be, you know, your niece or nephew. Maybe if you want to pass on the business to a family member, maybe you want to gift some of that. Maybe you want to gift all of that. You know, there's a lot of different considerations there because, you know, maybe you don't want to charge that family member to pass on this ownership of this business. But maybe you do need to monetize some of it because you need money for the rest of your life. And finally, how do you finance that? How do you, you know, maybe this family member doesn't have the funds to pay for this business outright. How do you get your cash out? And next is an ESOP. This is a ESOP. This is an option that might be available for businesses that have, you know, solid management teams, that they really want to preserve the culture. How do we potentially sell a part of the business to the management team? How does that work? That's kind of the inside party. So people you already know, I guess I would say. And then next is to people you don't know. How do you sell your business to people you don't know? Maybe that's a strategic buyer, someone that views your business as something that could really add substantial value to their existing business and something that's a complement. Could be a private equity firm. This is a firm that's not traded on publicly held markets that might buy up various, you know, companies in a, you know, in a specific type of industry. Or it could be going public if you're really a privately held company at massive scale and your exit is to the public market. And again, understanding all of this, some of this you might have some good, strong feelings about, but you wanted to reach out to your advisory team and see where you're going to capture, you know, the most value. You know, if you really want to pass on a business to a family member, you're probably not looking to squeak out every, you know, every cent of value there. You're looking for, you know, passing on your legacy, and you would like to help that family. So that's going to be a different valuation than when you sell to a, you know, a third party where, you know, you don't have a relationship and you're really looking to maximize the cash flow back to you. So again, these are different options that are available, and this is really want to pull in your advisory team, get different viewpoints, and find out different ways you can achieve your goals and, you know, potentially different buyers. Okay, what to do before the sale. This is a long list of complicated estate planning strategies. The goal here is not to walk you through all of these, but for you to be aware that there's a lot more that you need to do besides finding a buyer, especially if you're looking to have potentially an estate over $12 million. That's where the U.S. government is going to come in there. And if you want to pass on, you know, dollars above that threshold, they're going to tax that at 40%. That's when you really feel the pain. You know, a 40% tax is not insignificant for anybody. So that's when you want to really kind of utilize some of these, I'd say, wealth transfer strategies. This is where you're going to pull in your CPA. This is when you're going to pull in your wealth advisor, your estate planning team, as far in advance as possible to really get these strategies in place to maximize what you can keep. Again, there's some, I'd say, unusual clients that don't mind just giving it to the U.S. government, or if they're leaving everything to charity, maybe there's less planning that they need to consider. But again, for every family, there's going to be different concerns, and you want to have these types of discussions early on before you have a buyer in place, and when you can have a relaxed discussion and change your mind about you. So it's never too soon to begin these discussions. You know, we work with families years in advance of a sale to really solidify their planning, for people to be comfortable, to have open discussions and not feel rushed when you're making, you know, the biggest transaction of your life. That's the last thing you want to do. And we don't want you to make a mistake that might potentially cost you millions of dollars. So as soon as you can, reach out to your advisory team and begin brainstorming when you're not in, you know, a rush situation about how to really do advanced planning. So again, if you're not familiar with these terms, that's fine. And they're definitely complex, but we want you to be aware that there's significant learning that can be had here. Again, planning. This is a list of kind of your team, things that you need to understand, and understand that it's not a product. Oftentimes people ask me to have a sample of our work products that we have from our team. And that's really not, it's harder to do, right? It's almost like, because a lot of it is discussion. It's discovery. It's finding out that there's, a special needs child. It's finding out that there's someone that can't manage this money. It's finding out that you don't want to sell to your competitor because you don't like them. This is what it all is involved. I guess what I would say is before, what drives the value, again, nothing that a business owner wouldn't already be aware of, but verifiable cash flow. COVID has put a hiccup in a lot of this because some businesses have seen a lot of growth. I'm thinking like places like home improvement centers, anything, your contractor that you can't get in because they're so busy. Places have seen like declines, like the hotel industry, the hospitality industry. Definitely, saw some changes that are probably not sustainable due to COVID. Your team, right? You want a stable, financially motivated team. No one wants to buy business and have all the key people leave the next day. So you want to make sure that people are well paid and that they're likely to stay. And then next, the process. I'd say the processes that are in place. So that's like accounting, financial records. We want audited financials. We want clean financials. We want you to have a budget. All these things that, no one wants to work on, but it really kind of will outline to a third party the story of your business. I can learn so much from a tax return, from a budget, what's going on there. Again, if they're a third party, that's what they're going to have to rely on. So you really want to make sure to do prep work in place so people can feel confident when they're moving into taking over your business. This is just a little bit about, I'd say, the timeline that's available. Get together the team, put together a short-term contingency, and then consider really kind of your exit plan. The sale or the transfer is super stressful. You want to make sure that you've been very thoughtful ahead of time. And next, you can really enjoy and preserve your wealth. We work with a wealth advisor to, before you make those large purchases, to make sure that they are sustained. Homes, as we all know, are very expensive outside of the purchase price. Taxes, operating expenses, maintenance. You really want to forecast that, and furnishings. All those things are something that you really need to forecast into your wealth plan, and what you want to do for the next generation. If you no longer have this nice engine of a business that can help create significant cash, is your nest big enough? And do you need to kind of make adjustments to your lifestyle? I'll give you just some lead off before I just transition into some other conversational points here. Again, begin early, begin before you have a buyer. The M&A market is in place. So, I like to make the comment, the M&A market is very strong. So I like to make the comment that people think everything's for sale. You don't have to be on the market to get an unsolicited offer. It happens every single day. So, and you might not be for sale, but then for the right price, suddenly you are. Suddenly it's something that you might want to consider. Again, it's like your home. If the home is not for sale, but for $100 million, maybe it's for sale, right? So we want to make sure that you're getting ahead of the game, and that in this market where there's a lot of money looking to make strong privately held investments, to have a plan in place is very important, even when you don't think it's on your near-term horizon.
Lisa, before you transition over to the next part, can I ask
Sure.
specific questions on what you
100%.
just Okay.
Yep.
So because you mentioned the M&A market is so strong right now, there was a few questions specific to that.
Sure.
Right now, who do you see doing all the buying? Family, private equity, or corporations?
I would say the private equity market is very hot right now, and that market has gotten a lot of bad press. I'd say in recent years in terms of not caring as much about the organization, the culture, and that has changed. And again, you have to remember that if you are a seller, put place to maintain things. I had a seller say, I want to make sure that this product is going to stay named after my daughter. That's important to me. He didn't think he could ask for that, but the private equity company, they didn't care. That was fine. They wanted to buy the business. So that was something that you do have levers there. But that market has been, I'd say, very, very active. They understand that they kind of got the reputation for being not as caring about culture. And they're making adjustments so they can still be successful buyers. There's always going to be the large corporations out there buying, but the big dollars really are in PE right now.
And a follow up on that, do you see any long-term implications of private equity buying up a lot in our community?
Yeah, there's going to be there's going to be always reductions in terms of headcount, because what a lot of private equity shops do is they buy business A and then they buy business B, which will complement business A. So when that does happen, there's going to be a lot of, I'd say, more administrative reduction. Sometimes they might already have a little business location. It's usually not as great a situation for the rank and file employees, depending on why the private equity firm is buying that business. So it kind of depends on where you might sit. I guess what I would also mention is that the owner is usually going to be very aware of what will happen with their business. They can look at the plan that the private equity firm has in place, how they would fit into that. Most of the time, they're going to want the owner to stay on board to help with transition. So the owner is going to be aware of that and can do their best to really care for their employees as much as they would want to.
Okay. And then this question came in right after your donut example, but it also kind of ties in. You talked about valuation. In a sale,
Yeah.
How do you place value on brand recognition?
Oh, it all depends on the industry, right? Donut example, all brand recognition, right? It wasn't the location, it was Dinkle's Donuts. You go there for Dinkle's Donuts because they're delicious and you love them. And they might change their recipe, but you still in your mind, you think you love it. For things that might be more commodity based, there's going to be, less brand recognition. And again, it's going to completely depend on the product, but that is something that you don't want to discount. And this is one of those intangible types of things, right? How do you place the value on the brand? I guess I would say that if that your customer knows it, and things like Kleenex or whatever that that you use in terms of the brand name versus the name of the actual product, that's going to be a more successful brand name. What I would always suggest to every business owner is you can get what's called a desktop valuation. You can, people want to sell your business, right? They're going to get paid to, and you don't have to, pay to get a good valuation. You can reach out to, smaller boutique M&A firms and say, like, what's my business worth? What do you think this brand is worth? Who would want to buy it? If they think there's value there, they're not going to charge you for that service. They're going to want to win the business, and they're going to share that type of information. We do this at Fifth Third every single day. So it's not going to be too hard for you to get third-party valuation work done really for free on that side.
Okay, great. And then I had one last question pertaining to this part. At a macro level, from a financial perspective, what are the pros and cons of going ESOP to the business owner?
Yeah, that's a deep one. Pros and cons. Usually what you see for business owners is the reason the ultimate reason they go ESOP, which is essentially selling to their employees, is because they have a very strong management team in place. That's critical. If somebody doesn't have that, that's usually not going to make the most sense if they don't have a very strong management team that wants to put their financial resources into the business. So, think about it as if you, rather than investing in your 401k, you're comfortable saying, I love this business. I'm going to stay here forever. I'm going to put all of my retirement funds into this business. If you have a good, solid team of people that want to do that, ESOP might be right for you. Typically, you're going to get, so I'd say business owners choose the ESOP option if they would like. It's very important to them to maintain the culture, to potentially stay in the business for a bit longer, and to really, grow something in their local community. We see a lot of these things where they don't want to sell to, big corporations, private equity. They want to make sure it kind of stays where they are and to help the people that have already helped them grow that business. Typically, the valuation you're going to get on an ESOP is going to be less than it would be to a third party or strategic advisor. But if that number makes sense for you, there's also some tax savings that you can have as a result of doing an ESOP. It's probably never going to be the same as selling to a third party. But if you want to keep this business in your communities, it should be something you want to entertain.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks. And again, there's more. Feel free to jump in. I'm going to touch on, let me just check time here real quick. A couple of other, again, we're going to touch on ESOP a little bit more, and also just touch on a bit of financing options. Again, I'll touch a little bit here just on retirement and cash flow planning. What is very important for us, and one of the first things after we do give clients evaluation, is we want to make sure that they understand, especially if clients are, this is going to be their last bite of the apple. We want to make sure that they understand how this money will be invested, how, if there's burnouts, maybe they're going to get some of this money later. Maybe if it depends on the success of the business, how much they get later. We're going to do best and worst case scenarios. What if they sell this business and it really tanks and they don't get anything else? Are they financially secure? And really, make sure that the funds that they receive are sufficient for them and for their family. And again, this is different than if you were to, leave your employment of, just kind of being as I am, like a bank employee, because again, a lot of people run a lot of their more personal expenses through their business. So it's something you really want to get some third-party analysis on and make sure that the money that you're getting is sufficient for your lifestyle. This is, again, these slides just touch a little bit on the investment and risk management planning. And again, this is more for, I'd say, the second stage of post-sale. There's a lot of people that always have business ideas. I have so many clients, people want to open restaurants, they want to make movies, and they're all, a lot of those are great ideas, but you want to, again, maintain that advisory team for you to understand that the risks of some of these investments, as well as understanding your risk tolerance. You might have, a bucket of, I'd say, fun money to put into, more high risk investments. But then you're still very comfortable that if you were to lose that money, you could still afford your lifestyle. But you don't want to lose it all. You don't want to invest too much in high risk. My son was just asking me yesterday about Mike Tyson, and he made all this money and now he's broke. Again, this is not having the safeguards in place for making sure you're, being mindful that, Mike Tyson, yeah, he made a lot of money and he's not boxing anymore, I don't think, right? But you want to make sure that there's someone that's protecting you and protecting, these kind of more whimsical decisions. So this is the investment management and the risk planning team. And again, part of my job and part of, the jobs of other people on my team is, We do say no. Again, it's not our money. We can't decide, but we do make advice. And oftentimes we tell clients there's things that they may not want to hear. And that's what you want. You want someone to say, you can't afford this. This is something that's too expensive for you. This is not wise. And the Mike Tyson example, you own 4 tigers. That's insane. You want someone to tell you this stuff, right? That to give you that type of guidance. So again, it is your money, but you want to make sure that there's a team in place to help really protect you from other people. And sometimes it can be great when you have the friend that's got the business plan in place and to help you say no and protect you from yourself, just making, bad decisions. Or I'd say decisions that are not in your best interest. And we just have a few more minutes before we get to questions. So I'm going to flip through a couple more slides. So again, this is the ESOP. This is probably, worthy of a 3 to 4 hour seminar to fully understand. What I would just highlight here is this is wealth transfer strategies that people are very familiar with, selling to a third party. Everyone gets it. Everyone's bought and sold things before, or given a gift, right? You either gift it like a sweater, or you buy it, you sell it. Is it essentially sells your business to your key management. And there's a lot of, regulated guidance around how that can happen. But I would say if you are very focused on, the key management in place, potentially rewarding them outside of just a financial reward, and you really want to, create something that's going to have your name on it and not mixed up with a larger corporation, there are some tax benefits for you. And that's something you want to reach out to an ESOP advisor. So that's something that, again, is not as people are often not as familiar with it because it's not a buy, sell, or gift, but it's something that is available. So we wanted to just definitely highlight that. This just, again, shows some more of the intricacies of an ESOP, and we will share this deck, and it's definitely worth a conversation if it's something you're considering. And next, I just wanted to touch on briefly for businesses that are still growing, the Small Business Administration is a government agency that is available to help encourage small business growth. So, you can get friends and family money. That's great. Oftentimes that can, be in the form of a loan, or it can be a form of an equity investment. But I would also encourage you, if you are in the earlier stages of your business, to consider a small business loan that and an organization like Fifth Third and other organizations are authorized to provide that type of financing. In this deck, I won't go through all of them, but it will show you the different types of financing that are available, from, larger financing uses such as to purchase land, building, equipment. The U.S. government wants to encourage this type of domestic investment, to smaller sizes, the SBA Express, where, it's a $500,000 line. This is, inventory, buying out a partner. These are things that are all available. And for different types of underwriting, there's different types of underwriting for these types of loans. So if you are growing your business, I don't want you to feel that you need to take equity partners all the time. You want to make sure you have as much control as possible. Like if anyone watches Shark Tank, you don't want to give up too much of your business. That's what I always tell people. And this is something that is worth investigating if you are looking for debt financing for your business. So it's I'm in Central Time. It's 9:45 here, but I wanted to make sure to just leave 15 minutes open for questions on anything. Feel free to put those in the chat box.
I do have a question. Some of them are coming.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, some of them are coming directly to me. In the chat, there was conversation about gifting a business, and you had mentioned that as well in your presentation. So the question is,
Sure.
How do you gift a business to a charity? Does the charity run it? Does the charity turn it around and sell it? Or do you typically see them gifting just a portion of it to a charity?
Yeah, so that's what makes sense for a charity is what you would want to do is charity's not looking to become an operating business and run your business. That's not in their nature. If you want to do gifting to a charity, cash, you can do other types of assets. You can, part of your investment portfolio, or if you sell a business and you gift 100% of the proceeds, you can do that without paying federal estate tax. So if you sell, I'm making up these numbers, $100 million, and you want to give it to a local charity, typically you would have to, you would pay an estate tax if it was upon your death, 40% above the $12 million threshold. But if it's going to charity, that wouldn't be taxed. So again, you don't want the charity doesn't want to operate your business, but you can leave them as a beneficiary to your estate. But again, they love cash. They love marketable securities. That's something that can be turned into cash very easily. And, any gift over the annual exclusion of $15,000, you're going to have to file, an estate return, but that's not too pricey. And I guess what I would say is that if you are leaving to a charity, they don't want to run your business, but they want something that can be turned into cash proceeds in the near term. And there's some great planning available in the U.S. to maximize proceeds going to charities.
Okay, thank you. On that, I will remind the audience that your Friendly Family Business Center is a nonprofit 501c3. So if that's an option, happy to talk.
That's an option right there, sure.
Yes. Do you see business owners pulling out cash, like years in advance, for example, for retirement and then closing as a form of retirement?
That's called a dividend recap, and we do those all the time. So what that is, and again, this is why you're not going to know the options, right? So reach out to an advisor. For example, you might have most of our business owners have the vast majority of their wealth tied up in their business. They might have $1,000 in their checking account and their business is worth, 100 million. So what we often see is people that they say it's a dividend recap. They want to take some chips off the table. The business can support it. They will take, it's really financing of the business. So they'll take debt on the business, and then they'll keep those proceeds. And again, there's an underwriting process that comes out with that. But maybe they'll say, hey, I don't want to sell this business, but I want a vacation house. I want a boat. I want these other things. And I know the valuation justifies it, but I don't want to sell. And I don't want to take on another partner and sell a smaller piece of my business. That's when a dividend recap might be a good fit for you. And that's something that Fifth Third can finance. Many other organizations can do the same.
Okay. And when does the bank predict the M&A activity to slow down?
Yeah, so that's a big question. For strong 18 months. As we all know, interest rates, right? So when that happens, most of these M&A transactions are leveraged deals. That means they're being financed by a third party. So when the interest rates go up, there's less, it becomes more expensive for these PE firms to borrow, right? So eventually you will see it, you will see those multiples declining because it's become more and more expensive for the PE firms to get debt. That has not happened yet, but mathematically speaking, over the next couple of years, that should happen. So I'd say we still see a very robust 18 months, but when you see interest rates going up, everything, financing becomes more expensive for everybody, including PE firms. So you want to, this great run isn't going to last forever. The next 18 months we're comfortable with, but again, as debt costs go up, the multiples are going to go down.
Okay.
Eventually.
So from a buyer's perspective, do you advise taking a loan and acting now?
Do you advise taking a loan and?
So from a buyer's perspective, I think it's saying, do you advise acting now versus waiting with the rates going up?
I guess, okay, I'm trying, and when you're do you mean like buying another business or in terms
I think
of
so. So if you're buying a business.
buying a business? I mean, I guess what I would say is going up. It depends on what your financing sources really are. Um, you can, debt, the cost of interest rates is not the only driver in terms of, the decision-making process. But if you are looking, to provide to, significant debt, it's going to, interest rates are going to go up several times for the rest of the year. So all other things being equal, you can expect, the cost of your debt to go up later this year. So if you can secure something sooner rather than later, that's going to be wise.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I saw come at me. Is there anything else that you had or wanted to add?
I think what I would just, say, and these are all some great questions. The goal of my presentation was to really highlight, in the audience that there's, again, that advanced planning is critical. It can help you, keep more dollars in your pocket, and, your advisory team is critical. They're not going to all be, and they want to win your business. So you're not going to always be necessarily out of pocket for having discussions. They want to demonstrate their worth. They want to demonstrate their ideas. So, you want to shop around and really make sure you find a team that you're comfortable with, and having the resource of time to really, chat with people, chat with your family, we always have tons of discussions after the holidays, after families have gotten together to understand the goals is very important. And I guess what I would say lastly is never assume that everybody's motivation. That I've seen over the years is people like for ESOPs, they always say, I want to keep these jobs for my management team. They're great. They've been with me for 30 years. And I think that's so commendable to have that type of devotion to your team, and the idea that you want to recognize their contribution over the long term. But sometimes when you talk to somebody and say, hey, I could work hard for this, for you to maintain your job, or I can give you this large cash payout. Sometimes people want the cash payout. So give them the options, have that discussion, right? Because you never really know what's going on with different people. And oftentimes when there's a discussion, you might be surprised. Maybe that payout gives them the opportunity to retire early, and that would be something they'd be looking forward to doing. You don't know. So, we always like to talk to clients and say, what are your goals? And we like to find different ways that they can achieve those goals, right? By different strategies that might be successful in achieving those goals, whether it's paying for college, taking care of key employees. There's not one way to do it. So having active and open discussions about your goals and what you want to achieve for other people is very helpful.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, team from Fifth Third, for presenting today. This is very valuable information. I think we learned that the type of the exit strategies that you have in mind will play a role in the steps required to prepare your business for sale. I know you had that slide up and said you weren't going to go into detail about that. But we also know that an outside buyer will oftentimes have a different review process operationally and financially, and the purchase price and transition structure will be based off of that review as well. So our next mini forum in this series will focus on that part of it, and that will be by center sponsor law firm Shoemaker on May 3rd at 10 a.m. So we have invitations out, and we will make sure the group gets the link to register for that as well. And I believe Kirsten just put some links to all of our social media in the chat. We would love for you to like, follow, share, comment on what we do. Megan works really hard at getting our content out there. I believe she was live tweeting through this event on Twitter. So if anyone's out on Twitter, make sure to check that out as well. And as Megan mentioned earlier, we did record the session. It will be up on YouTube in a little bit. Maybe later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We will get that link out to you as well, and feel free to share it with a colleague or someone who you think would find value in this presentation. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lisa and the team from Fifth Third.
Thanks, everyone. Reach out with any questions.
All right, thank you. All righty, have a great day, everyone.